Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Susan McGuire, Director of Professional Development at ACCE, and I'm very happy to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar. Today's webinar is the first of our 2018 to 2019 professional development year, and we are so delighted to have Kathy Height here to help kick us off. Kathy will talk today about member personas, what they are and how they can help you better understand the needs of the members you serve and recruit and retain more of the members you want. So before I turn the program over to Kathy, I do have a few housekeeping notes. First, attendees are in listen-only mode during the webinar to avoid background noise. Second, after the presentation, we'll have some time for questions. You can ask your questions by using the question function of the webinar. The question box is on the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Just type in your question and I will read the question to Kathy after she's done with her presentation. If we run out of time and don't get to your question, or if you have a question that you would prefer to discuss with us individually offline, you can feel free to contact Kathy directly. She'll have her contact information in the presentation. Or if you need to contact us here at ACCE, that's fine too. You can contact me or we will get in touch with you afterwards. If you've submitted a question and we don't get to it, we will contact you, so no worries. Third, the webinar is being recorded and it will be up on the ACCE website on the ACCE University webinar page no later than this Thursday, September 13th. Also, the webinar presentation slides are uploaded to the webinar panel on the right-hand side of your computer screen. If you want to download them, just click on the presentation to download it. If for some reason that doesn't work for you or you would rather listen and not download, that's totally okay as well. I will be posting the presentation slides along with the webinar recording on the webinar page, so you'll have everything together there. So with that, I will introduce our speaker. Kathy Height provides strategies to help chambers evolve, deliver benefits that members value, and effectively communicate the value of membership. Her expertise is in strategic planning, membership development, and organizational realignment, and she's contributed to the success of many ACCE Chamber of the Year award winners. She's the author of the Member Retention Kit and a New Approach to Tiered Membership, and is a sought-out speaker and consultant. Kathy has a diverse career experience, including serving as the SVP for Growth Strategy for the Austin Chamber, VP of Operations for the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii, Regional Sales and Marketing Manager for Dole Foods and Dean Foods, National Manager for the Kauffman Foundation's Fast Track Entrepreneurship Program, and a Motorola University Instructor for Continuous Improvement. Kathy served as a national trainer for ACCE for membership development and has been an instructor for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Institute for Organization Management for over 14 years. Kathy holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Human Development from the University of Hawaii. So thank you so much, Kathy, for being with us today, and take it away.
All right. Well, great. Well, thank you very much. And thanks for doing the intro, so I don't have to get into any of that because Susan did a great job covering that. So we'll get into the details. Susan, just let me know you're able to see the advancement on the slides.
Okay, I still see the first slide right now.
Okay. Yeah, because it's saying that there's a window, and I just has.
Now we see the there we go. Oh, let's start. Okay. There we go.
Are we good?
I have webinar objectives.
Got it. Okay. Well, good. So today, what we're going to be focusing on is looking at marketing personas. It's a relatively, I think, a new topic that's being discussed in the industry, although the concept has been around for a while. So I kind of want to give you a little bit of overview about marketing personas and then talk about 5 steps that you can use to develop yours. And then think about how you can use these personas to create more targeted messages, which I think are important instead of that one-size-fits-all approach that we usually have, and might also help you to look at your programming and think about some changes that you want to make there as well. So one thing that we know, and you could probably agree with, is that we serve a really diverse audience, and that makes things really difficult. Unlike trade associations where everyone's from the same industry or a lot alike, I think our membership base is very, very diverse. So we're covering various industries. We have different types of people that are engaged. And so that makes our job a little bit harder. And so these are some questions that I want us to think about as we frame this topic and thinking about messaging and what resonates best with different kinds of members. And I'm going to challenge you to really ask yourself as to whether or not you really know your members and what they're looking for. And I think sometimes we know, but this might kind of help us to kind of think a little bit more from their perspective. And I know we do a lot of segmentation and talk about segmentation all the time as being a good tool for recruiting and retention, but it's like we tend to use a lot of demographics to do that. We'll talk about the difference between demographics and what we call more psychographics or behavioral variables that actually help us to define our customers a little bit better. And that's going to take us a little bit further, although demographics is still definitely going to play the role. So one thing that we can probably all agree on is we have a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to marketing, membership, and what we do. And that's old school. So the old school is really trying to just broadcast, say something once and hope that it resonates with a lot of different people without really a whole lot of thought in terms of audiences. The reality is that we serve a lot of different audiences. And in today's marketing arena, it really needs to reach the intended audience, and it needs to sound like we're talking to them. And I think that's where value is created, is when our members or prospects really feel that what we're doing is actually for them. And I always like to remember that the root word of sell is to serve. And no one likes to feel that they're being sold, but everyone does like to feel that they're being served. So new school, it's around segmentation. And that's something that I think I brought over from my career experience in working with Joel and with Dean Foods, which is all about food, but realizing that the different stores served different kinds of people who liked different kinds of products. And so we would outfit a store based on some behavioral indicators. So we would purchase the list of what people were buying and really understand what their preferences were. And then based on what their preferences were, then how do we choose the right products to put in that store for that particular audience? And I think that's something that we don't do as good a job in terms of our industry, is thinking about segmentation. And it's not just the size of business, but it actually goes beyond that. And you're going to see what I mean as we kind of walk through this exercise and show you some examples of what that means when we start to look at segmentation. So, what's a persona? This is a marketing term, and a persona is actually a description of a intended audience or customer. And oftentimes we will use a picture, but don't get caught up in saying that all the customers are going to look just like that. The idea about a marketing persona is we're really going to describe the character or the personality, the way that they kind of come across to us based on what they say and what seems to be important to them. So when we talk about a persona, it's just a description of a particular audience. We're going to try to be specific as we can, at the same time realizing that it's a little broader than that, but at least it gives us an idea of who we're talking about. So personas don't have pictures of real members. They're just fictional, right? We're just saying, okay, so this is whatever we want to call this particular persona, and it's meant to be fictional. So even though we might think of certain members as we consider that particular audience, we're not really necessarily talking about that particular member. We're just talking about members that are like this. So think about that. It's fictional. We don't want to actually use any members' photos. as we do this, because it's not really meant to be just about that one person. It is based on real information about them demographically. It will also contain some speculation. So you're going to try to imagine what they're like, but you maybe really don't know everything. So you're going to be guessing, if you will, based on what you know about them and their behaviors and the kinds of things that they say. And so you are adding the demographics with some things that you're envisioning might come along with that as well. When you put those characteristics together, it starts to create a personality, if you will, and you go, oh, I know members that are just like this, and that's the intent. The intent is to create a persona that makes you think of certain groups of your members because they seem to really fit this personality, if you will, very, very well. So why are personas important? Well, because it really lets us think about our members and who they are and how we can serve them better. So it's going to allow us to put ourselves into their shoes, right? So we can sort of see things through their eyes and understand what attracts them and what doesn't. That's going to help us to think about offers that we want to present and who they're for. And when we think about certain kind of programs to say, well, who's that for? Because it's not for all members. It's for members that look like this, right? It's also going to help us to create a much better experience because when we think about what's important to them, we're going to say, oh, then probably what they would like or the environment that would work best for them or the best technology tool to really communicate with them looks like this, right? So it's going to help us to look at things a little bit differently, and that should then drive everything that we do so that we're consciously aware of who we're doing it for, why they would value it, and that's going to help us to create language that makes it a lot easier to talk about the chamber and what it does. Back in my days when I worked for Dole as sales and marketing manager, back then we just sold one product. It was pineapple, but we had different markets. We had a grocery market, we had a food service market, and we had a visitor market. And for the visitor market, we dressed up those pineapples with hula skirts and sunglasses. And the kind of information that we packaged with it taught them about how to grow a pineapple when they got home, how to cut it. For food service, we talked about recipes and the ways that you use pineapple every day because we had to make it attractive for chefs and people who were actually going to be cutting it and incorporating that into their menus. And on the grocery side, we did a lot of demos. We had to explain to people, why the color was not as important on the outside, that we knew the fruit was ripe through different reasons, and to be able to cut it open and to kind of show that to them. So very different audiences, same product, but the way that we talked about the product and the way that we sold the product was a little bit different. And so that's kind of what I want you to start thinking about is the chamber is not going to be any different. It's just that who you're marketing the chamber to and how you're pitching it and the types of programs that you recommend are much more audience centered rather than just generic in terms of that being the chamber. So a buyer persona, a member persona for our case is really important because it's going to allow us to think about the customer and then it's going to allow us to think about how to package what we offer in a way that's going to appeal to that particular customer segment. So that's kind of giving you the nuts and bolts of what's a member persona. So if I see that the next time, I'm going to understand what we're talking about. And if you check out HubSpot or Marketo or any of these automated marketing sources, you're going to see that they're going to talk about that. So if you want to use their automated marketing platform, they'll ask you about the persona. Who's it for? Who are you trying to reach? So that you can start to formulate your messages. So I think you're going to start seeing more and more of that as we move into a digital transformation age. And so it's a term that you want to get familiar with, but more importantly, you want to figure out how to use it internally. So how do you go about creating member personas? What what all do you have to do? So we're going to talk about 5 steps. And as we talk about the 5 steps, I'm going to show you some examples of chambers that are actually using this. So it's not fiction. You actually will do this so that you can kind of walk through that same process for yourself. So the first thing you're going to do in step 1 is you want to think about audience segments. So when you think about all the people that you have as members, if you were going to somehow put them into different categories, what are some different ways that you might cluster them together? And I think the first thing that you want to do is you want to look at your membership data. And when you pull lists of your customers, you can certainly look at the size of the company, certainly is a variable that you can use for segmentation, the types of industry. So, you may find that you have a lot of companies that are in a particular industry. And you might also think about, how many of them are local? Are they corporate entities that are not headquartered there? Just to have an idea, certainly looking at it by dues level. And here's something that you might have in your database, but you may not have it for every contact in your database, is what is the role or position in the company? And that's important because you have certain kinds of programs that are more targeted, if you will, to certain audiences. If you had age, like if you actually knew the age of each of the contacts, that would certainly be a demographic variable, but I don't think most of us collect that information or would even know unless we saw those members frequently. So demographics are really important. Now for us, when we're looking at our membership, which is more company membership, we have to realize that even within a company, we may have contacts that actually represent different types of users, if you will. You have the CEO, you may have the person who buys sponsorships from you, you may have the public policy person, um, you may have someone who you would classify as being kind of more of a young professional, right? So the problem with that, since our memberships are company-wide, is we have to start paying attention to the contacts within that membership, that member company, to realize that even within that membership, we actually have multiple users, which means they're actually a different audience. Many of you are familiar with the 4 quadrants, and we talk about community investors, community builders, business investors, business builders. On a larger scale, this is sort of similar in the sense that even within a company, even within a membership, you're probably going to find all 4 of those kinds of people in the same member company. It's not the company who falls into each of these quadrants. It's probably an engager or a decision maker. So starting first with looking at your audience and what you know about them demographically is the first place that you're going to start. So let's take a look at a particular audience that I know you have a lot of. So we're going to call this Entrepreneur Emily, although you have plenty of them that are male. And Entrepreneur Emily is the owner of a small business. And you want to get as specific as you can for your persona. So we're going to say, probably most of our small business owners who are members, they probably range in age, right, between 28 and 38. And let's take a wild guess. We think that a lot of them have bachelor's degrees, so they're educated. And what do you think the income range is of that particular entrepreneur? And again, this is a general assumption that we're making about those businesses of 1 or 2. We're going to guess that they're probably married, and in this case, they live in Austin, right, which is where I am. So Entrepreneur Emily makes up the majority of our membership. But this is just a description demographically of what we think our Entrepreneur Emilys are like. Again, Emily being just the name of the persona, and we're saying entrepreneur because this is our really small business owner. Okay. So we said, another group we think is At first we thought retail, restaurant. We said, okay, well, we're going to focus on restaurant. Although the reality is that a lot of restaurateurs or small shop retail owners are probably really similar, meaning that they have a bricks and mortar presence, but they're not very large. And we're thinking, middle age, 35, 45. We think a lot of them are probably educated as well and married. We think that they probably, make a little bit more money. Hopefully they make enough money, obviously, to be able to have this bricks and mortar presence. The other thing that when we talked about looking at these different groups is we said, we kind of look at this person as being bankable, meaning they're able to get a loan to actually open up that bricks and mortar presence, which is maybe a little different than an entrepreneur, Emily, who might be operating out of her home. And we think that we probably have a lot of those businesses that are home-based rather than bricks and mortar based. So, the first thing we did when we were doing this as an exercise is we just kind of came up with a flip chart, and we said, okay, so let's come up with what the different clusters might be. So I'm just showing you snippets of these different audiences. We actually had 6 different personas that we developed. We had some other ones in the parking lot, but decided not to go with them right as yet. But you're looking for the concentration. Where do you have a lot of people that could probably fit into this persona? So the restaurateur, retailer, small bricks and mortar company was what this particular persona was intended for. Then we went a little deeper and we said, okay, what's it like to be entrepreneur Emily? Okay, so beyond the demographics, what is it like for her running this little business and probably out of her home? And in our head, we were thinking it could be a person that sold insurance, or could be anything, but this is obviously somebody who's embarked on starting a business. And so what's going on with them? Well, they probably want to be respected. Maybe sometimes they don't think people think of her as being really taken seriously because she doesn't really have a big company. Maybe she hasn't even been in business very long. And she's looking for some tips, from other business owners, trying to figure it out. We just said, she doesn't really have the secret sauce, trying to figure it out. And so why did she start her own business? Well, she's probably trying to make enough money, not only for herself, but for her family. And there's a lot of competition. And this is a person who probably not necessarily super marketing savvy, but trying to figure out how they're going to get people to buy from them versus someone else. And she's looking for some friends, some other business owners, certainly to get to know, and probably looking for some mentors as well. And because of her limited income and being kind of more as a very small startup business, certainly looking for things that don't cost a lot of money, that's really going to help her. And her main goal really is looking for leads, right? Now, this person is probably just a soloist. She might have a spouse that's involved with her business. So she's doing everything. She's wearing all the hats. She's doing the lead generation. She's doing the marketing for the company, closing the sales, delivering the services, doing the bookkeeping. So, and she's also trying to run her own personal life at the same time. So this is a person who's very, very busy, but doesn't know what she doesn't know. And so everything kind of looks like candy on a shelf, but can't really decide exactly what's going to work best for her business. Enterprise Ethan, we decided, was kind of more of a mid-size company. And we really wrestled with, well, does he own the company, or is he like the district manager? And we said, well, you know what, this could actually be a branch manager. This is a person who definitely has a bricks and mortar operation, but they have more staff, whether they're a corporate office or it's their own venue. We're thinking that they probably have a team that's anywhere from 10 to 15 people, maybe even up to 40 people. So we really kind of saw this as a different persona. And we said, okay, so for Ethan, he doesn't want to meet everybody. He wants to meet people he would consider to be people of interest, right? So decision makers, people that he wants to really kind of have a buying relationship with, needs to stay in the know, wants to know what's going on in the community and around business and legislation. And his whole job there really is getting market share for his particular division or company. And he feels himself like climbing his career. He's probably middle age. He really sees that this is a whole growth opportunity for him, whether it's within his particular company, or just sees himself sort of on this trajectory of growing perhaps a larger company. And so what he's looking for, he wants to be taken seriously because, he's about in middle age. He wants to make sure that he can talk to other executives and really feel like he belongs there and has a seat at the table. He wants some introductions to people who are decision makers. And he really wants to build long-term relationships, and maybe the kinds of things that he sells or is involved in has a longer selling cycle. So he's not looking for just a quick lead at a business after hours, but probably something that's going to develop and turn into a better customer for him. But at the same time, work-life balance is certainly an issue. Has kids and definitely doesn't want his business to consume all of his time. And then we thought about marketing Mary, and we said, this is the person who buys sponsorships. This is not always the CEO of a company, but definitely sort of drives the branding initiatives for that company. So she's there to really help position the company in the market. And when we think about the community builders, for instance, in the grid that we talked about earlier, that you probably have seen with Frank Kenny and Kyle Sexton and Mick Fleming's talked about that as well. Yes, but this really is the community builder, but not always the CEO. And that was the qualification we made. We said, this is a person who makes decisions, but their focus is really on positioning, branding, being able to tell their corporate story. They're busy because this could be the community affairs officer. This is the person who's probably doing a lot of fundraising, who gets hit on by a lot of people to donate or sponsor things. And that person probably has a really full schedule, being involved in so many aspects of the community in that role, and is also probably trying to run a personal life on top of it. And we all know that time poverty is an issue, but realizing that marketing Mary, her whole job is making sure that she puts her company's interests first and making sure that they get what they need and get an ROI for that investment. So as we start to get to know more about them, we also have to think about their challenges. So what makes their life so difficult? Advocate Andy and, at the Austin Chamber, they do have a lot of people who are interested in public policy. This could be the business owner who says, no, for me, my engagement with the chamber is all about making sure that it's a pro-business environment. It could be the public policy or legal counsel for a company. Sometimes it's also the CEO, but we're just thinking, okay, but what are they really concerned about, and what's their passion? And it's really around advocacy. So when we thought about Advocate Andy, and we said, okay, what keeps him up at night? What's going on? What's his everyday battle? And we said, oh, it's all around the regulations, right? And whether his focus is local, state, or federal, we're just saying this person is constantly monitoring and figuring out where that company is going to get impacted. Building relationships with policymakers sometimes is really difficult, getting past the staff and actually be able to speak to the representative or a key person who is driving policy in that market is someone that they really want to get to know and be with. Those are primary challenges. We said secondarily, there's things that come up out of nowhere that even though they've done all their monitoring, they're like, wow, where did that come from, and suddenly having to be reactionary and drop everything and go and take care of that. And the other thing too is during the legislative period of time, they put a lot of hours in and just trying to stay on top of all the different things that are going on, the bills that are being introduced, and making sure that they're not missing anything. That's their greatest fear is, if I don't have my eye everywhere, I'm going to miss something, and that's really going to have an impact to my company. And our last persona was CEO Charlie. And we envisioned this person as being older, more seasoned, if you will, and really sort of focusing more on the macro issues, looking at the community and saying, yes, I'm responsible for this company. I'm not going to be here for a long time. I'm worried whether or not I'm ready to hand this over to someone else, looking at could be regulatory, but talent, a big concern, and how that succession planning is really going to be there. And they're worried that over the last 10 or 20 years, they've seen some dramatic changes in the environment. And I really look at this as being more of that community investor who's got that long-term view and has some concern. They want to make sure that things are going to stay good, not only for them and their grandkids, but also for the community at large. So again, kind of digging into the demographics, we thought about age, income being much higher, education, and also realizing that they have an ultimate role, right, for that vision, long-term strategies, but they really do want to make a difference. They're sort of the legacy builders of the community, and they're waiting to be able to go and spend all this time, but at the same time, they want to make sure that they've laid the groundwork and they really have a plan of action for turning things over. Um, Probably something that's really changed for a lot of CEOs. It used to be that policymakers really respected them and came to them and, sort of looked at them as being trusted advisors. And a lot of the CEOs were feeling that that's not the case anymore. Like, we don't really seem to have those same relationships. They're making decisions without necessarily coming to us, which they felt was important. They want to have a seat at the table with other influencers and hang out with other people just like them. Certainly staying in the know. They are true collaborators. They don't feel like anything really happens in a vacuum, that it takes a lot of people coming together to make that happen. And oftentimes this is somebody you're going to have on your board, but you may not necessarily see at a lot of your activities. And for them, again, constantly thinking about the impact of what's happening in the community or in the region and being concerned about that. So you've been introduced to the 6 different kinds of personas. You're going to bring that all together so that you actually have a one page for each of these different personas and say, okay, we have the demographics. We kind of are thinking about background, things that are kind of playing into what this person is like and what kinds of goals they have, where their challenges, and then also thinking about engagement. What does engagement mean for this particular member? What are they looking for? Certainly looking for that, we call that circles of power, to say, this person really wants to meet these groups of people where they can meet influencers who might be buyers, people who might be mentors, and sure, they want networking opportunities, but they're really sort of looking for a variety of things, right? They're looking for different kinds of connections for different reasons. And so being a part of a circle of power really provides some credibility to entrepreneur Emily. So once you've created your personas, um, this is going to come up and you'll say, well, how do we know? How do we know that we got this right? I mean, this is just the staff, right? Gathering around, playing around with these flip charts, creating our personas, and we're like, yeah, we really know this persona really well. But you want to check it out, then you want to bring together 5 or 6 members and show them your one-page persona and say, does that sound like you? Are we missing something? Because we want to make sure that it's not just you, but people who are just like you could really resonate with this and make sure that we really do understand this audience really well. So that and I know chambers, tend to want to do their homework. We really want to make sure we have something right before we go and act on it and start moving everything in that direction. So you can do that. And one way that you can do it is by coming up with an interview worksheet. So you can kind of describe this person or have a one sheet. If you don't have the one sheet, you might fill out something like this, or you might just take this as your actual questionnaire and interview the 5 or 6 people and say, okay, this is a male, what's your age, where do you live, tell me about your family, and actually sort of collect that so that you can come back and say, did we get that right? Or was our age range totally wrong? And I know you could talk to 100 people. The idea is that you want to get a sense that for the most part, you understand this audience and some commonalities that you feel comfortable selling to this person, engaging them in chamber activities, or looking at your programming and understanding, is it for this particular audience? So it's just getting you to a level of comfort. It's not that you're going to publish this information to your members. This for you is really internal for you to just have a grasp of who would we say are our top 5 or 6 personas or audiences in the chamber, and how would we describe them? Okay. All right. If you have some questions, hopefully you're generating some questions or some how-tos or, what do we do with that? So I will definitely be interested in responding to those. So make sure that you're actually thinking about that. So what are some things that you could do with this? And well, the first thing to think about is programming, right? And say, because we tend to put together a lot of programs, and certainly our programs might be aligning with our strategic plan, or if we're an economic development focused chamber, then our program around state of transportation, et cetera, is really to satisfy that, which is fine. But it's good to actually be able to look at your list of programs, your program of work, if you will, and then map it back and say, who's it for? Because even though you think that everything you do is for all of your members, the reality is that some things that you do are actually for more so for certain audiences. So I'll just show you something that we worked on with the Austin Chamber. You can certainly do this for yourself as well, because I think we tend to do a lot of similar things, although sometimes we may have things that are really different. So what we did was we put each of the 6 personas over to the left. And again, kind of a description of how many employees and what their role was in the company, and bringing over some of those one sheets that we did on the personas. And we said, okay, so pain points, it's really nice to have this just kind of side by side and go, okay, pain points, because do we have some things that are similar, or are they a little different for that particular persona, not necessarily shared with the other ones? Engagement expectations, which we did for each of their personas. So what is it that they're looking for? How do they want to be engaged with us? What are they kind of hoping that they're going to get? And then we looked at the current programs and opportunities and said, well, what do we have right now that kind of fits those engagement expectations? So for entrepreneur Emily, we said, okay, well, hopefully she will probably wants to go to the awards, or certainly be nominated to an award. The Austin Gives mixers are free. And so that's one that's, a lot of people come. And this particular chamber does not do a lot of networking per se, because it's a regional chamber, but they do have a Business Connect mixer, which usually happens kind of right before a big event. And they do have something called Power Up Austin, which is a roundtable approach around a popular topic, kind of designed more for small businesses, that brings together experts and allows for some peer-to-peer discussions. So we thought Entrepreneur Emily would certainly enjoy that. And then what kinds of communications do we currently have that that person's probably really going to gravitate towards and really read? So even though we have the Austin Jobs Report and we have the Centex, economy and all that kind of stuff, well, are they going to read that? Maybe, maybe not. So this is where we really sort of looked at communication, committees, and programs and said, who's it for? I mean, obviously the Council of Smaller Enterprises is probably designed for small business, but since this council has said that they're really targeting small businesses that have 10 to 49 employees, it probably really isn't for Entrepreneur Emily. So we didn't include that, right? And then we sort of looked at the gaps, and you can see that on pretty much all of these. We just said, okay, except for the things that the committees and the events they go to, we're not really sure if we provide as much value that's not focused around participation. So that might something that we actually have to think about, and sort of look at. Then we looked at opportunities and said, okay, well, what are some things that we could do to really appeal more to this particular audience, and think about, programming or just some things that we might want to take into consideration as we go into our planning. And when we got done with this and we looked at it and we said, okay, well, we don't have a whole lot of programs for Entrepreneur Emily. Do we want to create more? And the consensus was no. Because we're really heavily focused on advocacy and economic development, probably not. But probably where we could probably do more programming and really focus a little more is around enterprise Ethan, for more of that mid-size and giving them the support so that they could generate more jobs and deal with regulatory issues and things like that. So who knows what kind of insights that's going to drive for you, but it's a great exercise once you've done your persona building, to then look at it from the point of programs, committees, and communications to say, okay, do we have it covered? Are we missing something? Or, the other thing it might do is it might actually change topics that you offer within those venues, or making sure that you do have a part of your newsletter that is actually going to appeal to a particular persona because it's been lacking in your current delivery, right? So lots of things to think about, certainly after you've done this initial work, which, believe me, takes a while to do. It's not something you're going to knock out in an hour, so be prepared to put up, the 5 or 6, and then spend some time, keep coming back until you actually have something flushed out. But what's great, though, and the reason why we want to do this is because we want to create better member experiences, and we want them to feel that we know them. We know what keeps them up at night. We know what kinds of goals and challenges they have. We know where they see value and what value looks like to them. And so we can start to actually speak and do things in a way that actually is delivering on that better experience. They're going to say, oh, this is perfect. The other way that you can do it, like if you just took something like annual meeting and you said, well, this is really for all of our members, then you could say, okay, so we're going to describe 3 bullet points as to why the annual meeting is a don't miss event. Maybe each bullet will represent a point that you want to make with a particular audience. This is our largest networking with over 1,000 members in one place. Okay, that's going to appeal to the people who are really interested in the connections and looking at that as possible a way to get leads. But you got to put in another bullet that really is about, well, what else? What's going to make CEO Charlie and different people like that want to come? So if you can talk about, really just just having the opportunity to celebrate our accomplishments in the road ahead, okay, well, that's going to appeal to a totally different audience. So you can use the personas to actually help you build marketing points that are all driven to one event. It's just that you've got a different persona perspective when you're actually creating that description. So that will help you do that as well. So personas are going to help. Like I said, it's definitely going to help you think about topics, emails, newsletters, how you want to leverage social media. Certainly, it's going to help you to refine or design some new programming for sure. You can think about where the gaps are and what you want to do with the gaps. Do you want to put more emphasis there? Do you feel like you're overemphasizing on a particular target audience? Or do you want to say, no, the meat and potatoes of our audience really are these personas, and that's where we need to stay focused and not try to serve the fray, but really sort of stay centralized to these core audiences. I do think it's going to totally change the way that you recruit and engage and talk to your members about value, because you're going to be honing in on things that are important to them, rather than trying to have a one-size-fits-all message. And from there, you can create, and this is going to be saved for another webinar, is you can create customer journey maps, which basically is going to guide their journey with you, and what they can expect and where they can actually get involved. And just to kind of give you a snapshot, it's hard to find good customer journey maps out there in the internet because it's still relatively new. But this one was from MemberClicks, which is really just thinking about um, looking at changing your association management system and the journey that you would take to do that. So you can use a journey map concept for everything. You could have a customer journey map for onboarding a new member, but onboarding a new member that's entrepreneur Emily or restaurateur Randy is probably not the same way you would onboard CEO Charlie. So the reason why understanding personas is so critical in the beginning before you work on maps is because maps guide the journey, but oftentimes they're based around the needs of the member. And you don't want to create one journey map that all your members follow. So understanding the personas initially, and then think about, okay, if we're going to create a journey map, who's it for? And how are we going to be mapping that engagement? Might be more directed to a particular persona rather than overall. All right. Well, that kind of gets us almost to the top of the hour. So when we think about the summary, and we said that personas, right? They're not our members' photos up there and say, okay, this is all about Joe. No, it's this persona is fictional, and it's really just based on what we consider your ideal or your average member who would fit into this persona. What are they like? And it should include both demographic as well as behaviors or psychographics, which gets into motivation, values, beliefs, and things that are other than size of company, industry, et cetera, and really kind of describes them as a group. And like I said, created speculation. You don't know all this, but you are willing to make an educated guess as to what that looks like for them. And that's definitely going to help you to understand segments in a little bit different manner, because you're looking at segmentation by persona rather than just by size, and really putting yourself in their shoes so that you understand what's going on for them and what's going to motivate them to engage with you. And the reality is, we don't serve companies, we serve people. And the more that we understand who these clusters of people are and what they might have in common, is going to help us to do that, because this is a relationship business. And if you do not understand who they are as people, it's going to be really hard to do any kind of marketing with them. And then it's going to allow us to map our engagement opportunities and help us to recruit and engage and retain a little bit differently, because we understand who we're talking to. So I'm curious, what did you learn? Anything new? Who are you going to share it with? And how do you think this is going to help you? And we'll take
Okay, well,
questions and comments. Yeah.
yeah, thank you, Kathy. And what a great way to think about member and plan for and evaluate member engagement, recruiting, communications, events, and programs. Really, really good stuff. So, folks, if you have questions or comments, um, please feel free to type them in the question box, and we'll just run through as many as we can get to. I'll read them off to Kathy. So we have a few to begin with. Uh, the first one is, could you please elaborate on Circles of Power, which I believe was one of the programs that you had on your
Mm.
chart for the
It
audience.
wasn't actually a program as much as we thought, what they want to access is circles of power. So if you have a women's group, that could be a circle of power, or it could be a YP group, or, what they're looking for are um, connections, but connections that are probably more group centric, right? Because they want to find their group, and they're trying to figure out where are those circles of power. So we kind of threw that out as a term to say, instead of just one-on-one, they're looking for these circles where people like them, or people who might be mentors, or potential customers would hang out. So where are those circles of power for them, and how do we identify them and recommend them to Entrepreneur Emily? So that's the way we're approaching that. It's not a program itself.
Okay. Um, Another question, would it be too much to add during an onboarding process to send out a survey to help collect this data and place our members in their correct persona categories?
That's not a bad idea, especially if you were to frame it to say, I want to help you to, the Chamber offers so much, and we want to give you a sense of direction in terms of, where should you start, or ideally, what might be some groups for you. In order to do that, if you want to take this short survey, give us a little insight about you, where you can get some demographic information. You can also find out what they feel like maybe their top 2 challenges are. What are they hoping to gain, out of the membership, and so that you can then direct them accordingly. And then that would certainly help with the onboarding. And it's very possible that if you find that there are some common paths to make, you could probably actually create those journeys by saying, if you're really interested, if you're a small business, you're really interested in networking and getting to know a lot of people who can become aware about what you do. These are the 3 things that we would recommend, right? So I think there's a way to get to that generality, but I like the idea of helping them sort of self-disclose and share information that you may not have about them, so that you could have a better sense of direction for them.
Okay. How do you recommend best educating our ambassadors on this philosophy? They are most frequently from smaller businesses for this person's chamber, while their board is CEO level. We don't want to offend our ambassadors, but we also need them to understand from a recruitment standpoint who our ideal members are, and allow the super small businesses to come to us more organically. So,
That's a good point. And that's probably pretty similar to what this regional chamber was doing. Was they wanted to focus on enterprise Ethan, right? To say, we realize that we don't have a lot of that market share, and so we're really trying to engage those that have, 10 to 49 employees, and sort of describing, sort of entrepreneur that enterprise Ethan. And so we're kind of looking for companies of that size who we feel are underrepresented at the chamber, so that they realize it's not like you're discounting everybody else, but that you're saying, this is a group that we feel that we need more engagement from, and these are the kinds of activities and things that we think that they would be um, more likely to engage with us around, so that, again, they don't feel slighted. Because it's true, I do think that the smaller businesses will come, especially as the pond gets bigger. But you have to be acutely aware of where that sweet spot is you're targeting for your recruitment retention efforts, and then have them be able to speak intelligently to this company about what the chamber offers instead of just going straight to the business after hours idea.
Okay. The next question is, of all the chambers that have engaged in this process, what are the end results of their membership sales and retention? Have they grown because of it, or do they have data to show how effective the process is? So is there data to show what the sort of end results are of this process?
I have to tell you that very few chambers are working on this. So I don't think that you're going to, I think there are some people who are already leading the way on this. Um, so the Austin Chamber, I think, is a little unique in that they're going in this direction. And the other reason why they're going in this direction is because they're part of that digital transformation movement, like San Francisco Chamber is, so is Calgary. Um, you're starting to get a little bit more play on that with Nashville. So it tends to be some of those larger chambers. When you move to digital transformation and automated marketing, you have to write to the persona, which means you have to understand what that means. And so I think that we're seeing a small pod of chambers kind of leading the way. But I don't think any of them are down the path long enough to start to show you visibly what those results are and how their communication and programming has changed because of it. But hopefully we can kind of feature more of those chambers, in webinars and certainly at the convention, to start to kind of get their best practices to show up, because my guess is you're going to see that in the next couple of years, because most of them have embarked on this in the last year or so. So it's still kind of early, I think, in the chamber industry.
Okay. Is creating personas chamber size dependent to some degree? Or to ask it differently, is there a minimum number of members that a chamber should have before they start engaging in this activity?
Oh, it's a good question. I do think that it's kind of indicative of a couple of things. One, it's certainly based on your membership. I mean, if you're from a small community and 85% of your members are very small, whereas you're going to find that probably in a larger regional chamber, that's probably going to be down to more like 40% or 50%. So if you do have a lot of small businesses, but I still think that being able to distinguish between that business of one or two versus those that are a little more established, are a little bit different and maybe have more employees or have a different sense of maturity could definitely be a very different persona than somebody who's a startup, right? So even though you do have a small, mostly small businesses, I think you can still have a couple of different personas built in. And the way that, and the other thing too is maybe you're trying to attract more of an audience that you don't have, even though you got mostly businesses that have 5 or fewer employees, and you really wanted to start to go after kind of a mid-size, then even though you don't have a great representation in your chamber base right now, you could create a persona and begin to target messaging for those people to join. But you also have to make sure that your programming is going to support them, and they're not just going to be coming to a coffee and connections and business after hours, and you don't have programming that really supports the needs of a growing enterprise.
Okay. How long did it take you to develop the persona, or I suppose the set of personas?
I think initially when we only got together with a few staff. It wasn't like all staff were involved. I mean, like the Austin Chamber, for instance, has 40 staff. They would be too hard to try to bring all them together. So I think if you've got somebody who represents marketing, and a couple of people in membership, that's really all you need, because you want people who actually know enough members to actually be able to do this. So it doesn't have to be everyone in the company. In this case, because it's a large chamber, the CEO was not involved. It was pretty much marketing and membership that was involved. Sitting around, we only had like four staff, and I was facilitating, and we just did it in flip charts. And I want to say we probably knocked out the first 6 personas. in probably maybe about 3 hours. And then once we had it typed up, we were able to go in and do some refinement. We did come up with some other ones like the HR person or the tech entrepreneur, but said, okay, well, that's going to be too many. Why don't we just sort of hone in? So I think to start, and you definitely are going to have a CEO. You're definitely going to have maybe a mid-size and a small business. So I'm saying if you start off small with 3 or 4, is fine. I don't think I'd create another persona unless I really thought that I had enough people as an audience to really pay attention to them as separately versus where do I have most of my members falling into.
Okay. I think we have time for maybe one more question. It's 3, but we'll squeeze one more in. Wouldn't all chamber profiles be the same or at least very similar so that starting with another chamber's profiles and asking what's missing, could they start that way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think you could take the 6 and sit down and say, we could probably put that in 4 and let's just sort of finesse it. And I think that we'll get to the point where we have enough people doing it that could be something that could be shared across the industry. And I don't think people would necessarily have to start from scratch. Yes, I agree.
Okay. And there were a few folks asking if we could provide some of the information on the slides. Absolutely, the slides will be posted with the recorded webinar. So the information in there. Someone asked if you could share the personas with us. So we will post the slides. And if you need any other follow-up, I'm sure you could call Kathy and follow up further with her. All that information on the website should be available by tomorrow or Thursday, the 13th at the latest. So we'll all be posted there, including Kathy's contact info. So thank you for your great questions. A few we did not get to. We will get back to you guys. So no worries about that.
Yes, contact information's there. So look forward to it. I hope that people found it to be an enjoyable topic, and I'm sure we're going to see a whole lot more chambers developing personas and going in this direction. So that would be my hope.
Yeah, look forward to that. And thank you so much, Kathy. Great presentation. Thanks all of you for your interest. Just a reminder before we sign off. I'm reminded about recording. Our next ACC University webinar will be on Thursday the 20th, when we'll present our fall ACCE tour. So if you're new to ACCE or you want a refresher of our website and programs, join us for a tour and learn how to access our information library, sign up for e-communications, join a networking group, access our library of recorded webinars, and a lot more. So you can register for that webinar on our ACC events page, just like you register for this one. And so we look forward to seeing you there. So thank you again, Kathy, for taking the time to present today's webinar, and to everyone for your participation and your interest. Hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.